if Twitter shitposting was a competitive sport, this person would have a 2800 elo with a grandmaster title. This person is also a technical senior director in cloud security, a Bsides Pyongyang speaker, and one of the organizers of the DEFCON Social Engineering Village. I am joined here by the illustrious Rekdt. Welcome.
How's it going?
Good, huge fan. Happy to be talking
Thank
to
you.
you.
Ditto,
Um,
ditto.
there's a lot of things to talk about, interesting things you're involved in, but I really like to start on like how you even got into security from the beginning.
Yeah. Um, so my story is very interesting, and I'm gonna be taking sips of Celsius here. Not sponsored, but hey, you know what? If you want to throw us a sponsorship Celsius, let us know. Um, I do have a 2-month-old, as anyone who follows me on Twitter may be aware of. So
Nice.
not getting a lot of sleep still. So pounding caffeine like it's going out of style. Um, but back to security. So yeah, my cybersecurity journey, I would say, started way back before college, right? Um, as being just a young adult interested in computers, right? Um, always interested in what the weird stuff going on the internet was, right? Like, what are people doing with these things? Was introduced to computers very, very early, like MS-DOS was my first operating system, right? I remember my dad had Space Quest 3 on his computer, and he would play that, and I would just stand there and watch it and be like, "What the hell is this?" Um, and then eventually learned how to play Space Quest 3 myself, which was pretty cool. Um, so huge shout out to the Sierra team there, if anyone's listening from Sierra. Um, so yeah, I progressed up through, I'd say, early like hacker community, Alta Vista, like all that stuff that used to be a like hacker community type stuff. Um, back in like I'd say like mid 90s, right? Um, got into high school, still interested in computers more than anything else. Played a little bit of sports, but mostly did that to keep my parents happy so I could go back to play on my computer and they'd leave me alone. Um, got into college, started doing computer science because I was super interested in computers. After that, I graduated from college with my computer science degree, went to work for a broadband company way out in the middle of nowhere. And they, so the way that this broadband company worked is it wasn't like you typically see today where um, they'll run like a fiber cable or Cat 6 or whatever into like a neighborhood and then distribute that out to the neighborhood, right? Um, what we were doing was more of they would put up a tower and it would be like a 500-foot tall tower. From there, then they would broadcast internet in every direction. And so my job was to go out to people's houses and then stand on the roof, hold up a little like antenna thing to try to get the signal strength. Assuming I could get a decent signal, we would install an antenna, route that like Cat 5, I think at the time, down into the house, drill a hole in the wall, stick a Ethernet cable, terminate it, jack it into their computer, boom. Happy internet 2024, right? Or sorry, 2004. And so that was super interesting. I didn't think being in computer science, I'd have to learn how to climb like a 500-foot tall tower. And so being up on top of that thing, I was like, you know what? Like, this seems like a little bit out of the scope of what I should be doing. Um, and so I ended up quitting that job. Didn't think the pay was good enough. Moved back home to my parents' house. And from there, really had kind of identity crisis. That was 2008-ish. The tech industry is just decimated in 2008. People are getting laid off. I know high up people at companies nearby that are massive companies, and I'm talking to these people, and they're like, "Well, I would love to hire you. You know, entry level. We have entry level jobs, but I can grab like a senior with 10 years, 15 years experience
Hmm.
for entry level price. Like, why would I hire someone straight out of college, right? Even though you do have some network engineering experience and RF experience. Um, so identity crisis, right? Like, what do you do? I was like, well, I'm not gonna live in my parents' house. This fucking sucks. So I went, I don't know, 2 streets down and applied for a job at a local bar and grill, and very popular one. You'd probably recognize the name of it. Very quickly became a food server and then a bartender. Did bartending for 4 years then. Had a blast doing bartending. It was so much fun. Kind of parked my computer career for a while. Didn't even really play around with computers other than I think I played like a little bit of WoW at the time. Um, and it, it was an interesting time of my life because for really since I was like, I don't know, like maybe 8 years old, like I didn't really touch a computer. Um, and so I did that bartending thing. I was really enjoying it. Like it was super easy work for someone who has been busting their ass for the last like, I don't know, 15 years to get through school, AP classes, computer science, college, right? Going straight to work. I've been working since I was 16. Um, Bartending, I was making, I don't know, like $35 an hour. Working 20 hours a week. And that's all I needed to pay my rent and make my car payment. Go out drinking every night until 2 in the morning. Go to somebody's house afterwards. Um, Drink some more until like 5 a.m. Pass out, wake up at 2 o'clock next afternoon, go back to work again. Um, my boss at the time, she's the GM of the restaurant, said like, "Hey, like I know they're hiring people at our corporate office. Like, would you want to go work because you have a computer science degree? You want to go work in IT?" And I was like, "No, that sounds fucking terrible. Like, this is great. Like, what do you mean? I'm making $35 an hour. I'm working like 20 hours a week, and that's it. Like, that's fantastic. Like, I get to sit by the pool during the day. I work at night. I hang out with my friends. They just come in the bar and hang out, right? Um, IT fucking sucks. Screw that." And she was like, "Well, I mean, you want a career, right? Like, you can't do this forever." And I was like, "Fuck, I can't. I will." Um, and so she finally talked me into it. I said, "Okay, you know what? I'll go apply at corporate." I ended up applying at corporate. Being an employee already, they were like, "All right, let's give this guy a chance. He actually has a degree and seems to know what he's talking about." Um, was on the help desk for maybe 6 months, promoted on to off into an engineering role. This was now is like more solution engineering, focused on like point of sales. Which, if you're not familiar with restaurants, every restaurant has like a little computer terminal that the servers will use, and they'll type in orders on those. They get very, very good at them. They'll smash numbers in really quick or smash orders real quick. And it's kind of amazing to watch them do that. Whatever you think your typing speed is, I guarantee these servers are just way faster. It's crazy. I have a funny story about that. And I actually tweeted about it a while ago. It was one of my first like biggest tweets was there was a video of a woman on a terminal, and she's just going to town, like ringing somebody's order super fast. Like, you couldn't even see her fingers. I actually moved one of these buttons around because I noticed they were out of alphabetical order. Just, I was like, "Hey, like here's a problem. I'm just gonna fix this little problem that was a thing, right?" Because I mean, I'm OCD about everything, right? Like I see something out of order, I'm gonna fix it. Didn't really think about the repercussions of that. Fired it off. I don't know. Went back to work. Like 2 hours later, like the CEO calls my desk phone. He's like, "Hey, did something change on the point of sales? Because we're getting like, I don't know, like 50 calls every 10 minutes that our point of sales are messed up and like the servers don't like they're placing or they're hitting the wrong button. And it's causing all these issues with the point of sales, and which is then firing back to the kitchen, which they had display monitors in the kitchen then, which show the orders. And so when those get fired back, the managers go in and manually fix them. Um, and so they're off fixing stuff, and it was a huge mess, just for moving one button from like there was two buttons that were inverted that were out of alphabetical order. Um, and so yeah, they ended up reverting that back like on a Friday night. So kind of funny. But anyway, I did that for a couple of years. Started to get some security experience there. Um, excuse me.
Well, what
Take a
kind of
drink here.
security experience did you
Yeah.
start getting at that point?
So the point of sale terminals themselves had to be secure because they also took credit card payments. And so myself and another guy who worked directly on our security team would work together on, we would go like just look for potential areas that these things were vulnerable. They were purchased through a vendor, but
Mhm.
the way that the point of sales work, it's kind of interesting. you have options, right? Like typically they're the host device, which can be like if you go to a coffee shop, sometimes you'll see like an iPad, right? Or maybe a proprietary device that's been distributed to them. That's modern today. Back in like 2009 ish, we're talking about like an IBM terminal with a touchscreen, right? Running, I don't know, like Windows 2000 or something, like something you're like, oh God, like even now you're saying that, but back then we're like, oh shit, like this is not good. Um, but the software won't run otherwise, right? And so you're effectively trying to like harden this device, and um, that was my introduction to security experience. Right, I was working with a professional cybersecurity person whose his job was to make sure I did my job right. So I'm making sure that we're researching like, hey, like is there other alternative attack paths into this thing? They have USB ports, right? They have other ports that you
Hmm.
can plug stuff into. There was an attack that came out a little while ago, um, or sorry, it wasn't an attack that came out a couple days ago, but it was I think it was actually a Darknet Diaries episode that Jack was talking about a guy who managed to hack into some point of sales. I don't remember the details specifically, but there was some kind of data incident where someone effectively had like a rubber ducky, right? And they would just take that thing, plug it into point of sale, and then boom, remote terminal, right? Um, that was all they had to do. And these things were such cluttered messes anyway, right? That I mean, no one's going to notice that shit.
Right.
And especially if you were able to plug it into the back of it when no one even looks back there unless something's like super fucked up and broke. So, yeah, interesting kind of, I would say interesting kind of introduction to cybersecurity.
And I'm curious, did you ever have to deal with an incident on those machines, point of sale
So
machines?
we actually didn't. I would say that probably at the time our monitoring logging wasn't great.
Hmm.
Like if we had more of an IR incident, it was probably because like somebody was selling data on the dark web or something, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that's how we would have known.
Right.
Um, this was, um, I would say, kind of early days for like SIM type or
Yeah.
CM, however you want to say that type monitoring and logging. And
Wait,
so
do you say sim or seam?
I I say it both ways. It depends on who I'm
Yeah.
talking to. Um, my friends who speak Spanish tend to say CM because that's how it looks,
Mm.
right? Um, I say sim usually. 'Cause I like to play The Sims, right? Or I did way back in the day. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That we could probably dispute and debate how that's supposed to go on a 30-minute podcast by itself.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. This is still, I think, like people think that cybersecurity has been a thing for a long time, and it really hasn't. Like
Yeah.
cybersecurity today has just grown into what it is, and it's really just stacking layers on layers on layers on layers of, hey, we've learned all these things now that can be attack paths into what we operate as a business, and to defend against that, now you need all these different mitigating security controls, right? So, um, back then we didn't think about like, hey, like we need access to be able to see all data from all devices into a
Right.
centralized place, right? And then who's going to even look at that data, right? Like we're
Right.
talking trillions of logs potentially, right?
Hmm. And
Um,
back then, like as you said, like just being in like help desk or like a sysadmin, all of that, like usually security was handled by like the IT team, or like even if you had a team, like sometimes just like one IT guy that also had to
right.
like think about security, right?
Yeah, I was the point of sale guy. Like that's it.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
that was me. We're I think a 25 to 30 billion dollar company at that point. And I mean I was one guy. And our cybersecurity
Wow.
team, I think, which was not me, it was a different team,
So you had a
was
team. Nice.
7 people, I think, total.
Nice. That's pretty
Um,
good. Mm.
yeah, it was like an architect, a couple engineers, as head of she wasn't a CISO, but she was like a director over security.
Okay.
Like they didn't even bother to slap a CISO title on them. Like that's how
Hmm.
I guess seriously our business took security.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, yeah, no. From there, so funny story. A guy I knew and really liked to work with left that company to go work for a different company, and he went to go be their CISO. And so I wanted to pivot my career to cybersecurity because after working with this other guy that I knew, um, we had such a blast working together and seeing his side of the world, right? I was like, all right, security is where I belong. Because I mean,
Mhm.
this throws me back all the way to the beginning, where like talk about like getting to see like the actual like hacking happen, right? Like people are breaking things. You get to actually see like the bad side of computers, right? Like fixing and building stuff is fun, but breaking stuff is way more fun to me.
Mhm.
So um, he left to go be CISO. I told him, hey, is there any room for me? And he said, hell yeah, dude, let's go. That was the shortest interview I've ever had. I walked in and they basically asked me like, do you want to work here? And I said, yes. And they said, all right,
What
you
was
got
the
it.
role they were hiring for?
Security engineer. Yeah.
Okay, just general. Okay.
Yeah. And that role was very general across security. So
Mhm.
what they were looking for was really building, I'd say today, what you would call that is more of a like security operations.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
security operations, for those who don't know, is um, there's a lot of different moving pieces inside of security. Today, you think about you have like different security services that are running, like your EDR, right, or maybe your PAM, your privileged access management tools, or your IAM, right, your identity access management. All of these different components typically have like a entry level type component to them, um, where you don't need like a senior director necessarily doing day to day operations. So like if a user needs like an access role change, right? If you're spending senior time doing that, that's very very expensive work.
Mhm.
They should be off like changing stuff and making stuff better versus you have people who have to keep the lights on. So this role was more like lights on, I'd say, type work,
Mhm.
but very broad across security. So it allowed me to really learn a ton of stuff very quickly in different areas of what kind of a modern security team looked like. Because where I was coming from, I would say was not modern at all, um, even at the time. So
Mhm.
getting to see a more secure or more, I'd say, mature security team um, was very interesting. And then coming from being a previous tech lead, I very quickly rose up into another tech lead role now in security. Um, and so I ran like a security automation team as well as a security network team and focused on two, I'd say, similar things, right? But different, um, like they have overlapping parts in the Venn diagram, right? Um, but also very, very different areas. And so that gave me a lot of really, really broad experience. It helped then launch me into what was probably my biggest role, which was AWS came knocking on my door, right? And they said, hey, like we're looking for somebody who has automation and broad cybersecurity experience. Like, or do you want to come work for us? And so I took one look at the paycheck for a tech role and I was like, yep,
Mhm.
looks good.
I mean,
Um,
famously, Amazon pays really well, so which compensates for the soul crushing
yeah,
work.
it was roughly 2x
Yeah.
of my current salary. So I went from like I was making more than $100,000 a year as a security engineer, and as a tech lead, it was actually probably close to like 120. This was more than double that, so
Mhm. Mhm.
it was a significant chunk of change where I was just like you don't really say no to an offer, not only that can throw your career even higher, right? As well
Yeah.
as like would sort of like I don't know, I'm gonna buy a boat or some shit. Like what do you do when someone throws double the money at you, right?
Mhm.
Um, so really, really cool opportunity and really wild time. I actually told my wife, I got the job offer on her birthday. Um, and so
Nice.
we went out to eat for her birthday and I hadn't told her yet. And I was like, hey, by the way, I got a new job offer. And she was like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, yeah, and I already accepted it. And she was like, oh, okay. Well, it's my birthday, right? I was like, yeah, but wait to hear this part. And I told her about the salary, and she was like, hell yeah. Um, but yeah, it's a, I mean, my AWS career was, I'd say, very interesting. And I think I'm going to pause there though, because I've talked about a lot of stuff up to this point. This is kind of now a turning point in my career because it's more focused, I'd say, on like technical architecture versus I was more of like hands-on building things, development, stuff like that previous. And so is there anything you want to talk about up till this point?
Yeah, I guess it would be nice to go through like what were some of like the tools or concepts that you had to like do as like an engineer, like someone who wants to grow, who wants to get into a more architecture role. Like what are some of the things that you had to like learn and to advance?
Yeah, absolutely. So to be successful, I would say in an engineering role, you really have to demonstrate autonomy. And that means that you need to be the kind of person who looks for problems and then fixes them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, if someone's having a constant look over your shoulder, tell you you're doing something right or wrong, right? Like that's not ideal, I would say. For my own engineers, right? Like that's the kind of person I try to hire for is someone who I call it hungry, right? They go out and look for things to fix and then fix them. I'm happy to look at what they're working on, right? If they want me to see it and say, hey, like this is so good. Do you agree with this direction, right? But for the most part, I trust my people to go do what they need to do. Um, when it comes to the, I say the success of being in a cybersecurity role, right? That's very hard to define
Mm.
because I mean, when cybersecurity does their job well, typically you see people say like, well, why the fuck are we paying these people like so much money, right? Like nothing's
Nothing
happening,
happens. Yeah.
right? Like what do you mean we spent $2 million in cybersecurity this year, right? For nothing, right? And when something goes wrong, guess what? It's why the fuck are we paying these people so much money, right? Like we had an incident anyway, right? And so what success in cybersecurity looks like, right, is ideally those crickets, but at the same time, that's also not always a good sign. Like you should know if people are knocking on your door.
Mm.
Um, that should be something you should always be looking for. To like, hey, are we looking at the right things, right? Are we watching the right logs? Do we have the right monitoring? Do we know what to look for, right? And that's what I have my people looking for is making sure that we have those gaps covered. So
Mm-hmm.
if you if you have a team that's very interested in just getting better, not only for themselves, right, but also I would say for making their own workplace a secure place, then that's a good place to be.
Mm-hmm.
If yeah,
And earlier you mentioned automation. So can you give an example of like what kind of work that is?
absolutely. Yeah, so when it comes to automation, and this was a little different back in 2014, I guess, is around the time. There wasn't like a lot of, I guess, options around. So let me walk this a different direction. So today, if you look at what your availability for building automation is, like you have lots of options. Back then, we kind of had to look for opportunities to not only take, I would say, busy work off of people's plates, right? So if you think about like all the things that people do day to day in an IT org, so you have people that are going back to an example I used, right? Like let's say that you have a new person being onboarded, right? And they need all these now roles assigned to them, right? So they can have permissions to do the things they need to do their job. Um, how do you do that, right? Do you have someone go manually add groups in AD, right, for this user? Or maybe you have a role defined where you say, like, hey, role-based access control is a big cybersecurity thing. Like, great. I just pick one thing, slide it over, and you're done. Or maybe you say, like, hey, this person reports to this person. They're automatically going to be assigned this role because that's who this team is, right? If you know who that is, you can have this stuff just happen, right? With a little bit of there's multiple tools you can use to do this. We didn't really do a lot of AD, I would say, more
Mm-hmm.
automation. We were more focused on let's I'd say more like self-healing type stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, like if EDR is running on an asset, but maybe it just hasn't checked into the mothership in 4 days, right? It would go detect that. And if it didn't see it or couldn't get it to activate, it would yank it off and then reinstall it, right? And then check back in. And sometimes that would happen several times. And then after that, it would fail. And then we'd have to build all these edge cases, right? For, okay, well, if it's tried it 3 times and it still didn't get it successfully, does it generate a ticket then, right? And if it generates a ticket, then what does that ticket do, right? Does it go to this team? And then there's all these different workflows. It's kind of like building with Legos, right? Like you say, like, hey, we once, or maybe Legos is a bad example. Maybe it's more like building with Hot Wheels, right? Like you're building a track. Like you're saying, like, hey, like I'm gonna put a loop-de-loop here, right? And then after you go to that loop-de-loop, I'm gonna go into this section, and then after this, it's gonna launch it back into something else, and maybe back up the top. And so there's a lot of opportunity for taking, I'd say, busy work off people's plates, and that's really what we were looking for. Is just like, how do we free up people to do important things, like spending, I'd say, 40 hours a week for a person who's making $100,000 a year, right? Doing repeatable work just doesn't make sense. Today, what they do with that usually is they'll either ship that off to like offshore type labor. So your Mexico, your India, labor that's much, much cheaper than your American labor, or they'll find a way to automate it. And so does that answer your question or give you kind of an idea? Okay.
Sure, yeah. And moving into like your Amazon days, so I guess first a lot of people would love to get a job at Amazon. Like, do you have any advice on like how to pass their job interview and what that was like?
Yeah. So the interview is notorious for just being a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Amazon is very particular about the people they hire. They want them to be, I'd say, 2 things. They want them to be very familiar with Amazon culture, which is their 14-ish leadership principles. And I could probably still recite for you most of those. I won't, but I could. And then the other thing they want is someone who has a strong, I would say, technical background, and they want specifically developer type experience. Amazon slash AWS, and specifically AWS, because that's who I work for. AWS is, I would say, like software for software people, right? Like the cloud is really for developers. And so to work with developers, you need to understand how developers think, how they solve problems. I think that there's a lot of good things about the way that Amazon hires people, because they definitely hire really, 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 really smart people. When I was working for Amazon, I got to work with some just incredibly smart people that I still stay in contact with today. Now I see them from the customer side rather than from the like coworker peer side. So I get to harass them, which is way more fun. Like, where's my ticket? But yeah, no, it was I'd say a really good experience. I really enjoyed my time at Amazon. I notoriously was laid off because there was really an overstaffing on the team that I was on. So my role was focused specifically on solution architecture for security, but focused externally. So AWS kind of wanted a little piece of the, I'd say, like big four consulting that was just, I don't know, attractive to them at the time. And so what we would do is we would typically sell an engagement to a company, and then that company would hire us to come in and evaluate what they were doing. So we got to see, like, from we being the consultants facing externally from Amazon or AWS, we would get to see really the full layout of what these companies were building in the cloud, and evaluate, like, hey, like, how long have you been on this cloud journey for? What are you trying to do? What's your roadmap look like, right? And then we would typically set them up maybe a little more successful, because sometimes it was a problem of you had the right people at the company to say the right things, but they didn't really have enough, I guess, like voice, I guess, to push things over the goal line, right? So that we kind of helped with that sometimes, where if a company knew what they were doing, but they just needed help, we would tell the executives of that company, like, hey, like, we think you should do this. And by the way, also your team has been saying this as well. So you should listen to them, right? Um, or if they were just completely off the track doing something wild, we'd say, like, hey, like, that's a one way to do it, but I wouldn't do it that way. There's a couple of those as well where we had teams that were doing. Here's a good example. So, as a for those who don't know the way cloud works, so cloud is somewhat similar to the way that traditional IT has been done, which they consider like on-prem. Um, but there's a lot of things about cloud that you have to take entirely differently. There's a lot of different ways that cloud works that doesn't typically, I'd say, work well with on-prem type methodology. What's that
Mm-hmm.
word?
Yeah.
And so one of those is that typically when a company goes to cloud or starts to integrate to cloud, right, they will start super small, right? There'll be like one development team, and this development team will do everything from an application deployment. So that could mean they're going to be experts, right, for their company on development, on engineering, on network, on security, right? They're going to do all the different pieces that normally you'd have like an entire IT org covering. But as companies grow, right, that doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. And so we talked to these like Fortune 10 to 20, like Fortune 10, Fortune 20 size companies, like huge, massive companies, who are now spending 30, 40, $50 million in cloud. And come to find out that they, like, for example, they don't have a cloud network team. It's like, well, your on-prem is like a tenth of the size of your cloud deployment, and you have 5 network engineers and none of them
Mm-hmm.
work on cloud. Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. Um, like, your network is a huge mess. And it's going to get you popped, right? Not today, maybe, but definitely something to look out for. Sometimes people don't think about these kind of things, right? Like, it's one of the things that you see a lot of in cloud, that growth is very organic. But as that happens, people don't tend to see that, like, hey, like, it's time to maybe do the opposite of what I said a few minutes ago, right? Of, let's treat this thing like it's discrete, right? Like, this is a problem that we should be making experts in rather than making everyone an expert in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was some of what we did, right? Is help like executive teams understand that. We looked more low level as well at like architecture type diagrams, at the ways that teams were building like automation in the cloud, or deploy applications to the cloud, right? SDLC type work. And so it really boiled down to really what the customer wanted, which is what this whole thing is. And so I had a lot of fun doing that work because I got to see so much cool shit.
So in that line of work, working with like technical teams closely, what's a good way to for someone to like practice or like earn that knowledge even maybe before getting a role like that?
Yeah. I mean, there's documentation at this point everywhere. Like, you can learn pretty much anything you want to learn on YouTube. Um, if you're paying attention to the people who are smarter than you, right? Like, they'll generally lead you to where you probably should be going. Um, I recommend, if you want to do something, find someone who's already doing it and just follow them, right? Like, you can follow them on social media, you can go find them on LinkedIn. A lot of people are pretty friendly. You can even ping them and say, like, hey, like, I want to do what you do. Like, give me like a quick sentence or two of what you would do if you wanted to get started, right? Um, for someone who wants to do cloud security or cloud security architecture, you really need to have a very good grasp on not only, I would say, well, so if you think about cloud security architecture, right, like, it's a lot. Um, if you wanted to do security architecture, that's a little easier, I would say, because typically there's a lot of stuff that's still just focused on um, individual silos of security, right? So maybe you want to be like an IAM security architect, right? So learn about IAM, or maybe you want to be a network security architect, right? So learn about how network works and the security components of those. If you want to do cloud security architecture, which is what I do, and I don't really recommend it because it's a shit ton of information. I read, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours a day, I would say, of
Mm,
documentation, like just a ridiculous amount of documentation. Partially because my company is hybrid cloud. So, of course, one cloud isn't enough.
mm.
We're actually in 5 clouds. So,
5.
so kill me.
Wait. Let me get 5. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
GCP, Azure, AWS, what, Alibaba Cloud, and Oracle? Like, that's all the 5 I could even think of. I don't
So
even know what else there is.
we're not in Alibaba cloud, thank God.
Oracle
You,
though?
yep, we are in Oracle.
Oh my god.
Um, Oracle has been very hungry lately. They if Oracle already has, I would say, an existing contract with you, they're going to be pushing you towards their cloud. Um,
Okay.
and it's not a tough sell considering that you're probably vendor locked as it is, right? We also have IBM Cloud because we
Oh.
operate AS400s,
Ooh.
and so
Wow.
those are the five. So
What, like, they host them for you?
yeah, it's probably under somebody's desk.
That's crazy. Wow. Wow. Wait, so is the idea is like you just had like a lot of like legacy software that only runs on those, and so you don't want to like manage your own. You just like pay IBM to do it for you.
Yeah, this is more, I'd say, for development type work. So like how do we expand upon our existing capabilities and functionality? Give us a dev instance, right?
Hmm.
That's what this is
Okay.
it's giving us access so we don't have to go buy out our own infrastructure
Okay.
and
I
manage our own
see.
infrastructure for that, which is what cloud is, right? It's
Wow.
somebody else's computer that you borrow for a period of time for some cash, um, which may or may not be a better decision for you financially, right? Depends on a lot of factors. Cloud was wildly popular for a while at the very beginning, right? Just because it gave you access to, I mean, almost anything you could imagine with a credit card, right? You could say like,
Hmm.
"Hey, I want, I don't know, 500 GPUs." Great, there you go, you have it. I don't have to go like to my provisioning team, right, or um, my finance team, right, and go say like, "Hey, like I need to acquire this for my data center," and then I have to go rack and stack them, right? Um, much easier to just rent them, build what you want to build, and then I don't know. Do you still need that? Maybe you don't. I don't know. But the the benefits of cloud are numerous, and I won't get into those because you can go find those on Google, right?
Hmm.
Um, but if you want to be going back to your question, right? If you want to be a expert at anything, it's a significant steeper learning curve than it is for your traditional system, just because of how complex they are. Um, it's like a magnifier, right? Because you typically have the same type of stuff, but then more on top of it you have to learn because AWS, Azure, GCP, they all have their own flavor of different things that interact
Hmm.
now with various systems like databases and compute and um, networking and all this stuff. And everything's a trap when it comes to security. Like this stuff is all very easy to misconfigure. And so if you're not aware of what you're doing, it's very easy. Like it's super common that especially with today, all like you see all these vibe coded apps and these data breaches because they're just wildly exposing data without even realizing they're doing it, right? Like you can just, I don't know, HTTPS straight to database, and then guess what? Give me the entire database. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so my job is to make sure that doesn't happen. So my the end of my AWS career came what somewhat humorously, right? I um I was performing really well at AWS, receiving just really good feedback back from customers that they really liked the work that I was doing, to the point that AWS actually gave me like an Employee of the Quarter award, like a physical trophy award. Um, and 6 months later, they laid me off. So um, I, I think it was because our team was significantly overstaffed for um, the work we were actually doing, right? Like it was hard to actually get billable hours at the time. if you look at the rest of the industry for consultants, consultants were being laid off like crazy. Like all the big four were laying off consultants. So the writing was on the wall that, hey, like probably time to polish that resume. But I very quickly, after being laid off, bounced back into another role where it was another architect role for security, this time a principal security architect. And getting into that role very, very quickly became apparent that um, the main thing holding me back in the role was that I didn't really have um, a title, I guess, say high enough to
Mm-hmm.
help drive the results that I needed to drive. And so I, from principal security architect, became cloud security um, program lead. And so um, that became the senior director role. And so being now someone with a high enough title, I can now kind of push other teams around. Like people don't in IT and in business, it's kind of interesting how politics are a factor of like, I'm not going to talk to that guy or that girl because I don't know, they're a manager and I'm a director, or I don't have to listen to them because they don't have a high enough title to tell me what to do, right? um, this is such a stupid problem, but something you still have to deal with when you get to like the upper levels of business, especially in big companies. And so it doesn't happen everywhere, but it was definitely a thing where I am. So that's how I got to where I am today. So now my role is more of overseeing like really what cloud security is for a big organization. So there's lots of components. We have like plan, build, run, right? Which is your ITIL foundational components. You have, if you're not familiar with ITIL, I'm so glad for you. Please don't go read about it. But anyway, plan phase is your architecture, right? Maybe talking with your engineers a little bit to understand, like, hey, do you have concerns with this design? Your build phase is really your engineers building the thing now that you designed in your architecture. And then your run is more of your, we call lights on type work, where that thing needs to continue to run until you can upgrade it or retire it, right? If it goes down, it's probably a production outage and now you're in trouble. So my job is to make sure that all three of those components function for
Mm-hmm.
cloud security all the time.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, oh, fire away if you have a question.
Um,
Or otherwise, I'll just keep talking.
I think just it's worth asking. So since you deal with like multiple clouds now, is it generally just like applying the same principles to all clouds, or is there like domain specific knowledge that you need for each specific one?
Yeah. So, generally speaking, I would say that we're applying very similar security controls if you look at them from like a 30,000-foot view. Um, and those kind of go back to your best practices, right? Your whether they come from a vendor or industry. There's a couple different ways to do cybersecurity. Your I'd say more progressive cybersecurity people will say like your threat modeling is the most important component, right? Like, do you know your own threat surface, and then have you applied the specific security controls coming out of that threat model, right, to protect your environment? The other way is that like, hey, like I've got way too much threat surface to really threat model successfully, right? So I'm going to start with maybe the most likely security controls that could probably keep the majority of people out. And then if you focus on like the 90%, likely you're going to have a good time, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
focusing on doing more, I would say, of like a good example is like I've seen companies that go and do like bug bounty programs, right? For
Mm-hmm.
example, but if you look at like their vulnerability management reports, like they're lit up like a Christmas tree, right? And it's like, where's the value here, right? Like you should be spending your time patching and maturing that process, right? Like, okay, like if I 360 no scope you on a vulnerability, right? And hack you that way, like absolutely that can be a thing, right? But if like you don't have MFA turned on for your admins, like what the fuck are you doing? Like
Mm-hmm.
like that's probably gonna get you popped way faster than um some hacker with like some sweet trick where like, hey, like I don't know, I found some super obscure SQL injection or SQL injection, right?
Mm-hmm.
um So I tend to shoot for specifically the most likely versus the hot new thing that's coming down the pipe. AI is very, very hot right now.
Mm.
And AI security is very, very hot right now. Um, we don't do a ton, I would say, of AI type security today, but I can definitely see it coming. And I think there's value there, especially in helping teams understand like maybe what smart decisions look like, or at least giving you ideas. But um, I don't see the ROI yet.
Like as in like using AI for threat modeling and
Yeah,
architecture. It's not
I think yeah, there is I did see something interesting, I would say, recently, and it was a service that effectively takes like your architecture artifacts and AIifies them, or whatever that word is going to be, right?
mhm,
Um, and that does kind of interest me a little bit because um, as an architect, you spend a lot of time really designing and moving pieces around, right, and understanding like just the right component for this specific problem, right? Um, and how do you get to that point, right? Do you go learn about every single possible component that can fit
right.
that spot, right?
Mhm,
I mean, not now you're down to the due diligence of the person doing the work. So, are they good at their job? Did have they had time to look at every single component, right? Are they making a best guess? Does it even matter? Um, like for example, like I don't know if I'm running Apache web server versus some other web server, they both receive traffic. My website stays up, right? Do I care which is running? Maybe I do, maybe I don't, right? Um, from a security hat, I could say, hey, look, I don't know, Apache's got a way bigger, I'd say, community around it. They may have a lot hotter vulnerabilities, but at the same time, um, at least you're catching them, right? Like, God forbid, there's a thousand 0 days floating around because no one's looking at this thing. Especially in a state, right, where I'd say the bug bounty is starting to really catch up when it comes to AIification of like, hey, let's just fuzz the shit out of this
mhm,
thing and see what we can find, right? Um, so, and AI is definitely better about doing just that boring type work that a human will typically give up on, right? And so there's definitely ways to make smarter decisions, and that's one of them, right? Is to look at, hey, like, what are the chances of this thing actually being, or what are the chances of me, I'd say, being caught with my pants down running this application or this service or this software, right? Um, open source versus commercial, right? Um, and then various other components. How well does that commercial team work, right? Um, do they even work with you, right? A lot of commercial teams will just flip you a bird if you ask them for something. So it's there's a lot of nuance when it comes to, I'd say, upper levels of specifically security, but IT in general, right? And so a lot of what I do is negotiating with application teams, and negotiating with vendors,
mhm.
negotiating with my own team, right? On, hey, how do we spend our time, and what are the right things to spend on our time, right? Um, but it's a rewarding job. It's a fun job. I like doing it. I spend a lot of time talking, um, which I don't know. I guess I like to do, but I spend a lot of time shit posting on the internet because I've been in a lot of meetings. If you see me shit posting like crazy, it's probably because I'm really not a part of this meeting I'm in. Um, I get pulled into stuff where it's like, security needs to know about this, and I'm in a meeting like, no, I don't. Um, or it's fine that I know about it, but I know now, so not to be rude, but see you guys later.
And so being at AWS, I guess Amazon is one of the just biggest companies in the world, and so not particular to Amazon, but in general, working at a really large corporation, there's some like unique challenges that come with that. So what are some of the like unique things of working at such a big company?
So I would say for me, there's a couple different ways to look at that question, and I'm gonna, I think, address it from a couple different perspectives. So I think for me, working at Amazon, the most frustrating thing I had to deal with was Amazon's culture of really wanting to build everything themselves, right? Having to see just the, I don't know, sprawl of half finished things,
Mhm.
and then like you'd find something to be like, oh, great, that's exactly what I needed. And then you come to find out that like the specific component of the thing is not actually what it is, right? Amazon Chime's a great example of this, of something that
Yeah.
like somebody built. It's
It's
like,
finally dead, I think, right?
you know, it can always come back, right? um, yeah, I think I heard that Amazon's actually going towards Office 365. I don't know if that's a true statement or not. Um, but when I was there, I think there was I'm not sure about this, so don't quote me on this, but I mean, if you think about competitive advantage, right? Like, Microsoft is the biggest like Office slash whatever vendor in the world, right? So, um, unfortunately, they're also AWS's Azure component biggest competitor, right?
Hmm.
So if you hook up all of AWS, Amazon into Microsoft, right? Like there's a little bit of a fear there that like, hey, are they just going to jack all of our data, right? Are they going to
Hmm.
come just steal our ideas, right? And then migrate it to their own cloud? Is that a smart idea? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Is that something they were worried about? Maybe, maybe not, right? It seemed kind of weird to me that we used um, Microsoft Office type tools, but we never touched. Like we hosted Exchange servers on prem at AWS. Like, oh, the future's here. Let's host Exchange on prem. Um, do not do that. Um, unless you're Amazon, right? But and even they were like, oh, this is a bad idea. Because now that I think they're moving, but um, that was one of the biggest things that I didn't like is just like they were afraid to really go out and look for products that were already better. And even though they costed money, right? Like, okay, well, do you know how much your employees are making? Like, if you focus 3 Amazon employees on building a service that already exists, like you just paid for 5 years of that contract for that service. So, and
Right.
they're not going to do as good of a job, right? They're going to try, but um, like they're if you look at a commercial offering of a company that's got, I don't know, 5,000 customers that are constantly providing feedback into this thing, right? Um, like let's look at Amazon never did this, so that's why I'm going to use it as an example, so that I can't be blamed if for libel or whatever. Let's say Amazon wanted to make an EDR, right? An EDR. Okay, well, there's CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Defender out there, right? I think those are probably the top big three. Um, if we were to build our own to compete with these products, right? Like, how do you actually build something that competes with
Mm,
those products, right? Like
mm,
Microsoft sees everything that comes out from Windows, so
mhm,
they're able to very quickly identify what threats are, right? CrowdStrike and SentinelOne are very prolific across the enterprise of the world, right? So they also get a ton of data back to their customers. Like only Amazon computers receiving telemetry data and trying to then architect and build something for that, like that's going to be, I don't know, 10% or less quality of one of these massive products. But for some reason, that was the culture, right? It's like, we don't have it, we build it. We did not build our own EDR. So thankfully, someone was smart enough to do that. But that was kind of the thing that I would deal with or question, right? Is this worth it or not, right? Um,
mm,
someone probably got promoted on it, right? You
mm,
you build it enough for an MVP or minimum viable product, um, and push it into production state. Okay, great. Goes on the promo doc. No, not my problem anymore, right? I'm promoted out of this role. Um, so that's kind of
and
the way that's the way big tech works. Is and that's I think part of the reason why you see so many problems today with a lot of big tech type products is teams are more focused on that promotion, right? Like they get promoted by deploying and by sending something to production, right? And so it feels like and seems like to me, having experienced technology for the last 20 plus years, that um, products just seem unfinished when we get them, right? Like it's very much a thing. Like if you look at even video games, right? Like pushing out a game in the early beta phase, right? Like here, you test and deal with this shit. Tell us what's wrong with it, right? Like we're not going to do that due diligence ourselves. You see
mhm,
that as well, I think, with commercial offerings where you get what feels like a beta product, and you're like, I don't know if I want to really use this thing, or pay for this thing, right? This isn't a finished product. Um, and that's part of the reason why, right? Is because just getting it to that phase is sometimes enough to get somebody moved out of their role so they get it basically off their plate, and then somebody else has to deal with it. So,
Yeah, and I think that's what I was getting at is that I feel like in large companies there's a lot of politics, right? And those
hmm
politics is just, also gaming OKRs and KPIs, and that's what you end up having to do, like each person for themselves to move up the ladder, and that results in these like seemingly unfinished products. But then what's interesting is when you mentioned like sometimes I have to answer the question as well, like, is it worth it? And I feel like that's like kind of like ultimately studying like the economic viability of some products, and that's like way beyond security, way beyond like it's like how can you tell someone this is actually a stupid idea even though like their career kind of like relies on it.
yeah, I mean, a stupid idea to you, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that nobody wants it.
That's
Um,
true, yeah.
and it's kind of crazy, just I guess how much opinion goes into technology today versus like
Mm,
how much I'd say due diligence goes into like focus testing or understanding like what the actual problems we're trying to solve for, right? Um, and does the now solution provided actually solve the problem we intended to go solve for, right? Um, and in security, this is very much a thing you have to be concerned about because does your security control map to the actual threat you're trying to stop, right?
mm-hmm,
Um, like all the time, I have to talk with application teams that don't always have a lot of experience in security, and they'll say things like, I don't know, like hey, we deployed this web app and look, we put WAF in front of it, so it's protected, so we don't have to do anything else, right? It's like, well, WAF is not a silver bullet. None of these security controls are a silver bullet, right?
mm-hmm,
Ideally, you should have overlapping security controls covering multiple things so that if one of them fails for whatever reason, right? Hopefully, there's enough speed bumps now in this road that the threat actor is going to walk away. Um, so WAF bypass is very much a thing. So now, assuming the threat actor is on your host, right, at network edge or at internet edge, what are they going to do? Or do they have something preventing them from pivoting from there? Let's look at that asset. Like, oh, no, I can see you have, I don't know, 40 vulnerabilities that are unpatched on this web server, right? That you're planning on your WAF protecting, but now that with the WAF bypass, they're on there, you can now pivot from here to here to here to here. And look, now I've got access to your data. Um, and it's going out the door because there's no security control to stop that, right? No rate limiting to say, like, hey, like nobody can query 50,000, 50 million records at a time. I mean, your application doesn't need that, but for some reason you're still going to allow it. Okay. Um, Yeah, so talking to application teams, helping them understand really what threat means for them is
mm-hmm.
a heavy component of what um, your upper level cybersecurity people are doing today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and to do that effectively, you need to understand both like the attacker perspective, what the attacker capabilities are, but also from like developer perspective, like what how to make software and what controls can we even put in place.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, that's funny. I had a conversation with somebody maybe a day or two ago on Twitter on burnout.
Mm,
I don't know if we can call it Twitter anymore. Um, they were asking questions around architecture and threat modeling and um, being like, "Hey, like, what even is threat modeling? Like, why would anyone do this, right? Like, don't we have a list of security controls that's already available to us? Like, why do I need to go in and manually run through this thing and see what exactly and how do I even know, right? How do I know what my threats are, right? Um, and really, I mean, threat modeling from a nuance perspective, right? You really need to make sure you're focused on as low level as you can get, right?
mm,
Ideally, there's diminishing returns, or not ideally, but realistically, there's diminishing returns. So ideally, you should be focused on the most valuable things, right? Um, but to say that, like, maybe from like software perspective, like, hey, I've got an SBOM. I know what's actually in this software package. So I can look at these components and understand what exactly is my threat surface for, hey, is there a supply chain attack vulnerability, right? Like, do I need to worry about that, right? Do I need to make sure that I'm watching the right feeds, the right um, developer channels, right? To understand, hey, if this happens, right, do we have enough maybe space between when we take a patch, right, for a vulnerability or for the software that maybe we won't get caught up in a S or a supply chain attack, right? And in addition to that, um, can we also patch fast enough, right, that if there's, I don't know, log4j type situation, I also don't want to be caught with my pants down. So
Mhm.
where that middle ground is a little bit um, more of an art, I'd say, than um, something you can really describe.
And it feels like there's no
Yeah,
correct answer, just like a negotiation,
it
basically,
is
trying
absolutely.
to reach a middle ground.
And the way that my company does cybersecurity is we are very hands off. Like we don't touch really
Mhm.
any of production config. We don't patch for our application teams.
Mhm.
Um, we advise them on the risk that presents from not patching, depending on what level I would say of risk they're currently adopting. So let's say, for example, I don't know, you have an application with a web server that's got 80,000 vulnerabilities on it, right?
Mhm.
Like that's pretty high exploitation chance versus, hey, you've got, I don't know, two critical vulnerabilities, but they're in a middleware server that's behind three firewalls, right? Um, that are super low chance of being accessed anyway. Like, okay, like it's a high vulnerability, but low chance of exploitation due to where they sit, right? And so helping teams understand that also helps them make smarter decisions. So
Mhm.
say like, hey, like, yes, we have an SLA. You should be patching that within your service level agreement, which is going to depend on the company, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, helping teams understand their risk is one of the most important things we can do. And risk is
Mhm.
very hard, I would say, to depend on who you ask, right? It can be hard to calculate or hard to communicate. Everyone's got their own opinion on the way that risk works, but it's all theoretical. Um, real data versus theoretical data. Theoretical data is like air, and real data is worth its weight in gold, right? So, like, if you could tell somebody, like, hey, based on our data and based on previous IR incidents, right? If we see a critical vulnerability in maybe a network edge asset, right? Like mean time to exploitation on that is like 4 business days, or the business days doesn't matter, right? 4 days. And you say that's why our SLA is 3 or 72 hours, right? Um, that's something they can understand and say, like, okay, like it's
Mhm.
great. Like, I don't want to get into an IR situation. I don't want to end up having to answer to the CEO or the board, right, of why my application had to go down because
Mhm.
we didn't patch. So thank you for communicating that. We'll do our best to make sure that happens. Whether or not that actually happens is a whole different ballgame, because there's always shifting priorities in IT. At the end of the day, security does not generally make money for most companies. And so if a like a development team is looking at, hey, do we push out a new feature that potentially can make us $1 million a day, right? Versus go patch 3,000 vulnerabilities or something, right? Like, I wonder which way I'm going to go, right? Let's see. KPI, no KPI, right? Um, bonus, no bonus. Promotion, no promotion. So, um, fired, probably not fired.
Mhm.
We're actually probably not fired and also probably not fired. Um, but I mean, these are the kind of things I guess that you have to think about from putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? When you're at an upper level security type role is okay, like why should this person even listen to me, right? Like how
Mhm.
do I make sure I communicate in a way that you understand exactly my perspective, what I'm seeing, my experience of telling me, right, that we need to do this for the good of all of our jobs, right? Um, and make sure that it gets done then after that, because the devil's in actually getting to the finish line. Um, and security is hard. I tell people all the time, they ask me, like, hey, how do I get in cybersecurity? And I say, hey, like, why do you want to get in cybersecurity? You realize there's like way more money elsewhere, right? Like you can go be a developer and make 200K out of college and not have to worry about most of the shit that I have to deal with. Um, you'll have someone like me harassing you and you can say, go fuck off. So, I
Yeah.
mean, Yeah, it's a very interesting world to be in, and I would say that it's definitely for a specific type of person. Like I love to argue with people, so this is a great job for me. Um, like I love to get in a room and just debate stuff. But I wouldn't recommend this for everybody. Like if you don't like people, don't get into security. If
Hmm.
you don't like deep diving into technical topics, don't get into security. They will those two things, people will walk all over you. And I've seen like people actually cry in meetings from just the tension that comes from either they didn't come prepared with enough technical details, right? Um, they
Dang,
felt embarrassed, right?
to be fair, I've never seen that, but maybe that's just an Amazon thing, though.
No, that wasn't even an Amazon
Oh
thing.
shit.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, but I agree that like you have to continuously learn about technical stuff, but not for the technical stuff itself, but rather because you will be talking to a lot of people all the time, and it's really that people aspect that is actually the most challenging part of cybersecurity.
totally, totally. And I mean, I would say if you maybe zoom out to really a lot of what I've been talking about, um, a massive part about being successful in cybersecurity is trust.
Mm,
And it's not just trust as in computation, like your computer to my computer trust. We're talking about like, hey, does my internal teams trust me to tell them the right thing to do, right? Enough that
yeah.
they're going to actually go do it and hopefully then drive down our risk, right?
Hmm.
Um, if if there's no trust there, right, that they're just going to ignore me and go a different direction and go do whatever they want. And I've seen that too, right? I've seen people they tell me in a meeting that okay, yeah, like we're gonna go do that. 3 months later, check back in. Hey, this was supposed to be done 2 months ago. Where is it? Oh, we're not doing that. And it's like okay. Um, and I mean, sometimes people get fired for that. Sometimes they don't. So it's kind of wild. Just like the politics of what is security. And if you don't have to deal with that, that's great. Like I, I, I like it because I like to get a room and argue with people, and um, as well as build relationships with people. Like I think
Mm,
some of my best relationships I've built in a meeting room, right, helping understand like foundationally, like hey, like how aligned are we on this, right?
mm,
Um, and then having people understand like hey like this person really does know what they're talking about because they've got experience to back it up and they spend the time to go do the due diligence right to understand what our problem is and not only security but also from the non-security components of that problem too right and so um, it's a very rewarding career but very challenging.
mm, mm. I was thinking of moving into the B-sides stuff. Ooh, very interesting story you have that you were actually a speaker at Bsides Pyongyang. Can you explain what that is and how that happened?
Yeah so the B-sides Pyongyang was well let me back up. So, if you're not familiar with what
Mm-hmm.
B-Sides is a conference that could be either in person or it could be online, where generally people will put together a talk on a topic, usually cybersecurity related. Um, Sometimes they'll be doing that to get it ready for a larger conference, right? B-Sides are very local, usually to whatever major cities nearby. So you can probably find a local B-Sides wherever you are, right? So B-Sides Dallas, B-Sides Denver, B-Sides Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
B-Sides LA, I don't know. B-Sides Las Vegas, which is right before DEFCON. These are great places to get practice, right? Before you give a talk in front of a lot of people. And someone had the genius idea. And I can't remember her handle now off the top of my head. She's gonna be so mad at me for not remembering her. I'm so sorry if you're watching
Uh,
this. Um,
Lena or something, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wait, let me just find that
She also
handle.
runs the Malware Village at
Yeah,
DEFCON,
let me
and
find that
she
handle.
is amazing, by the way,
Oh,
and
Lambda
I love
Mamba,
her.
Lambda
Yeah,
Mamba.
yeah. Sorry, I haven't slept a lot in the last 2 months, so apologies for forgetting things. Um, but she had the brilliant idea, along with another gentleman who is very prominent in the cybersecurity community. His name starts with a B, and I'm also forgetting his name. I want to say, ooh, it's not Bryce, but anyway, they were like, "Hey, like we're gonna have kind of like a joke B-sides. It's gonna be North Korea, right? Like you're not allowed to go to North Korea as a Westerner, right? It's North Korea has been a very prolific um, cybersecurity threat actor for a long time. Lots of fun, interesting stuff. If you go Wikipedia, North Korean operations, right, in terms of cybersecurity, and so I thought that was interesting and funny. So I typed out a really, I don't know, dumb, funny uh, call for papers type title, threw some words in it. Most of what I do is read and write all day, so it's very easy for me to bang something out. And so I sent this over, and I was like, "Ha, that's funny. They'll probably think that's funny too because I know these people." Um, and lo and behold, like a couple weeks later, they were like, "You've been accepted, and are you prepared to give this talk on this date?" And I was like, "Oh shit!"
Wait, so to be clear, you had zero intention of actually giving that talk. You were just like submitting
No,
as a meme.
I thought because I think I thought in my brain I was like, because of course, being a security person, I did like a mini little like threat analysis, right? I was like, this probably has like a 15 to 20 to 30% chance of being real. So
Okay.
maybe I should like do something that is possible, right? Like not make it like totally crazy, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, like, hey, you know what? Like, this is a funny idea. And so the idea for my talk was weaponizing Western stupidity. Um, how, how to get hired at the Fortune 50 as a remote employee, right? Um,
Wow, that's relevant. That's based on real stories, eh?
yeah. And at the time, it was a really hot topic because
Yeah.
there was a lot of North Korean people that were being caught trying
Mm-hmm.
to interview for roles
Yeah.
at companies all over the United States and European countries and stuff like that. Just Western, I guess, companies. Um, we actually caught one right at the end of my time at Amazon. There was a guy who interviewed, and he this was back before like kind of deep fakes were really a thing. This is
Mm-hmm.
like roughly like 2021, I want to say. Um, and he was just a guy on camera, but he was moving his mouth, but his like lips didn't match the words that were being said or coming through the speaker. And we were like, this is
Hmm.
really weird.
Hmm.
And then so someone thought of an idea to like ask a question that was kind of like not really technical, but more like off the cuff, like more like cultural. Um, like, how do you like living in San Francisco or something? And they were just
Hmm.
like, like, I've never been to San Francisco. I don't know. I'm like, what's your favorite restaurant in San Francisco? Like, don't you live there? Um, and so, yeah, no, and then the call just drops and they just disappear. Um,
Hmm. Wow.
but yeah, no, that was the idea, right? And then I, I had in my mind like an idea, like I was just gonna like do like some OSINT on like some um like executives for like big Fortune companies and be like, here, you can just like threaten to kidnap their kids or some shit. Like that'll get you hired, right? Like, and then I was like, well, that's probably a bad idea. And then I ended up pivoting it more into all right, like here's the existing data on really what like North Korean threat actors are if you're
Hmm.
hiring, and what typically you can do to prevent accidentally hiring a North Korean, right? Um, like a threat actor into your organization. But then I started thinking about it and I was like, well, okay, but threat actors aren't just in North Korea, right? Like,
Hmm.
what if the person is a Westerner? Like, what if they live in
In San Francisco.
Arizona, right? Yeah. Um, like,
They
okay,
have
like
a favorite
now,
restaurant
yeah,
and that stuff.
your little VPN trick of oh they're roading in for VPN on North Korea is not going to work anymore, right? Um, oh, we're gonna watch their mouse clicks to make sure they're not, I don't know, AFK or some shit. Like
Hmm.
if you look at the actual tips, like it was like these don't make any sense unless you're actually hiring a North Korean. And like, okay, zoom that out. Like why would you be worried about any threat actor, not just a
Hmm.
North Korean? Like that seems very, very limited, right? It's a very hot topic, right? To say like don't accidentally hire a North Korean, but at the same time, like if you can't hire a North Korean, I mean, your DLP is probably shit. So whose fault is that, security guy?
Mm,
Um,
good one.
like what do you mean you can't hire the best talent from all over the world?
Wow. That's live threat modeling from a security architect. You want to apply your
Hmm.
solutions to everything, not just one case.
Yeah, you should always assume any employee can be malicious,
Yeah, yeah.
because they could. I mean, realistically, if Sue at accounting decides that she wants to go, I don't know, send $2 million to
Mm-hmm.
her own bank account, right? Like, are you going to catch that?
Right.
It's your job security. What are you going to
Mm-hmm.
do? Would you? Would you not? I don't know. And so, like, I think that was kind of the wild part for me as I started doing more research in this that I ended up making myself do, because I was like, well, all right, well, I don't want to make just a really shitty talk. So, um, yeah, the kind of the gist of it, I think it's available on YouTube. You can go watch it if you want to, but
Nice. I'll
um,
link it.
yeah, the gist of it is that I mean, assume you can hire a threat actor from anywhere, right? And then how would you know? Like, think about that, right? And also assume that anyone could be malicious in your company. Like, that's really what you should be thinking about as a security person. Is that,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what's my holistic threat surface? Not what's my, like, if someone was to 360 snipe me right through 360 no scope snipe me right through a tiny little hole. Like, yes, that's a thing, but not realistically. Like, it's probably not going to be what gets you popped. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
the guy who you're paying, I don't know, maybe you have a contractor in your um, on-prem data center who's making $10 an hour to go rack and stack stuff, who's got physical access to every server in your environment, right? If someone was to say like, hey, for 10 grand, go plug this USB thing
Mm-hmm.
into your server, right? Okay, he'll probably do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, but probably for less. That's a very real thing that's happened. So um, it's it's definitely there's lots of things to think about and worry about in cybersecurity. So um, enjoy the journey.
That's a good one, and I'll link to the to that talk below. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is also super interesting. So you're one of the organizers at DEFCON of the social engineering community. So can you just talk about what that is?
Yeah. So the primary organizers for us are Snow and JC. Love these two people to death. They're fantastic. And underneath them, we have a whole squad of people who help really plan and run day to day during
Mm-hmm.
DEFCON these operations of what it is to be a village in DEFCON. A lot of people don't realize that all DEFCON villages are effectively charities. Like, we have to fundraise and then um, provide like basically everything you see almost in a DEFCON village, minus maybe like chairs and some small like conference type things. Um, like all the signage, all the content, all the people, like that's all done on people's like private time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. And so um, not only the fundraising, right? Like, you see sponsors on villages and stuff. Um, but typically, like, for us in like the SEC, we do a badge every year, and that's just to try to break even on the money that like Snow and JC have put into this village to continue
Mm-hmm.
to make it to go. Um, they had to rebuild everything from the ground up due to the rift that happened a couple years ago that you can go read about in legal documents, right? And so like everything had to be rebuilt just so that there could even be an SEC. And so um so grateful to these people. My friend Corgi pulled me in a couple of years ago, and that's how I got introduced to the squad. And they're all fantastic, and I love to work with these people. I'd love to see them every year, and recommend coming back again next year, or this year now, I guess I should say. DEFCON 34 is this year,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure we'll be back. We haven't started planning yet, but I'm expecting to start pretty quick. And last year we did some really cool stuff around AI. Um, we had a face off between real social engineers versus AI social engineers using
Who,
the latest models, right?
who
Um,
won?
I think that the humans won, but just barely.
Nice.
Like, it was so the way that you get flags in social engineering communities contests is you have to get specific private ish type details out of a physical human being. So you'll call them on the phone, you'll ask them a series of questions, right? Like, who's your daddy? What does he do? Um, that's a throwback to some Crank Yankers, if there's any Crank Yankers fans out there. The Arnold Schwarzenegger soundboard, man, back in the day. Did you ever see that? Do you remember that?
No.
Oh, that's a good one. Um, yeah, there used to be like a thing where it was a. Sorry, I'm just going to go on a tangent now. Like it was a bunch of quotes from Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, like on a
Mm.
soundboard, and then these people would just call random numbers, and that's all they were allowed to do is use different like quotes from Arnold Schwarzenegger movies on the soundboard. And so like they call somebody and they'd say like, I don't know, it's been a while since I've watched one of these, like 15 years. Um, like, how are you? What are you doing? And they'd be like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. Like, I'm whatever. Like, okay, well, who's your daddy and what does he do? And they'd be like, and they try to like keep this conversation going as long as possible.
Mhm.
That's kind of like what social engineering village is especially the AI component, right? Is you're trying to keep them on the phone as long as possible. At the same time, you're trying to like establish some kind of repertoire with this person so that they'll give you some information that maybe they're not supposed to give up. And so for the main social engineering community challenge contest, what the contestants have to do is they have to go out and do a bunch of OSINT on
Mhm.
their target, and then they have to then develop a list of their own phone numbers to call, and then they use these phone numbers to then call in and get real data from real companies live at DEFCON. Um, whether or not that's legal, lawyers say it is. But anyway, it's really fun to watch. We're not allowed to record it because,
Mm.
but and the line's always really long to get in. So if you want to see that, definitely come get in line early. But the other way to get in is to volunteer. So if you want a free DEF CON badge and also you get to watch the contest, volunteer.
Mhm.
Um, it's really interesting. Humans, I think, are always going to be the weakest part of security, right? Um, People naturally love to help and be helpful. So when you call, especially a help desk, right, like that's their job is to be helpful. So weaponizing that and trying to use that, it's a really good skill for really anyone. And being a person, I don't have to do social engineering for my job, right? What I do have to do is I have to convince a stranger potentially in
Mhm.
a room that they need to go follow the direction that I'm telling them they need to go in, despite that direction being, I'd say, the opposite of what's going to KPI them or bonus them, right? Or get them
Right.
promoted. So, um, social engineering is absolutely a skill that's massively valuable, and that's part of what really attracts me to it is that it gives me a chance to um, talk to some of the people who are the best in our industry at really getting information or convincing people right to do things that maybe they didn't intend to do. um, and so fantastic skill to learn, highly recommend it. Ton of fun to watch, like I cannot recommend it enough. It's so much fun to come hang out in the village. So definitely come check us out if you're going to DEF CON 34 in Las Vegas this year. The Going back to your question about the AI versus humans, the AI main problem we had, and it was so frustrating to watch this. Fortunately, it wasn't me. Was the actual conference Wi-Fi was not good, and so they were
Mm.
having a lot of trouble getting the models to work and to actually um, respond back in a way that was human-like. And so the person on the
Mhm.
phone was actually getting frustrated. Like they started to kind of realize they were talking to a robot versus a real human. And I think that if we had just had
Like
better
specifically
Wi-Fi,
because of the latency, like it.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, like they would say like, "Hello, this is so and so." They'd be like,
Mhm.
"Hi, how are you doing today?"
Right.
They'd be like, "Hey, I'm doing pretty well. What can I help you with?" They'd be like, "You could help me with
Yeah. Yeah.
what's
Very
your Wi-Fi
unnatural.
password, right?" Yeah,
Mhm.
and yeah, no, and that that was specifically limited based on what they had access to, right? Because unfortunately, we're limited to the tools that we have available to us at the conference, and so
Mhm.
um, I think that I mean, we always learn something new every year. So I'm betting they'll probably come back better prepared this year. We'll have another face off. That's not official yet, but I would be very surprised if we don't do it again because it's very popular. And models are better this year. And also, there's a lot more, I'd say, there's a lot better local options. So you no longer have to use like a cloud-based type
Mm,
model to run these type of things. So
right.
um, it, it's going to be, I think, a good romp this year, and I'm excited about it. We're going to start kicking off the main social engineering community DEFCON contest pretty soon too. So if you want to compete, definitely keep an eye on the socials for social engineering community. Um, it's it's very frustrating for me because I've missed CFPs before because I haven't
Mm,
been paying close enough attention. So I'm
yeah.
telling you now, if you're watching this and you want to do that, right, keep an eye on it. Um, they haven't announced anything around contests around DEF CON yet, as far as I know, as of February 21st, 2:52 p.m. Mountain Time. Um, so it's coming. Just be aware.
Very cool. Nice. This we went through everything I wanted to talk about. Was there anything else
Cool.
you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, no, I don't really have, I guess, anything top of mind. I'll maybe close out and just say that thanks to everybody who has come and talked to me about like, hey, like I appreciate the content you post on Twitter or Bird app or whatever. I love feedback across the board, negative, positive, whatever, um, constructive or whatever you want to use as your verb there. Um, keep it coming. I love to hear that. I'm not afraid of hearing your constructive feedback. So I got a lot of interesting feedback at DEF CON last year. They were like, they people really did like my some of my stickers because they had there was a few that were a little AI flavored, and I was like, well, I'm doing this for free, people. Like,
Mm.
um, but that's still good feedback. I appreciate that. I'm looking at
I was
some
gonna
non.
mention your stickers. I mean, some of them were shiny too.
Yeah, yeah. They
Nice.
I try to do different types of stickers every year at
Mm,
DEF CON. For those who aren't aware, stickers at DEF CON are almost like a currency.
mm-hmm,
You can make a lot of friends just by designing like a throwing some words on a sticker, getting it
mm-hmm,
printed for, I don't know, $20, and then asking people like, hey, do you have a sticker to trade or something? If you're not great at initiating conversation or talking to people, it's a great way to have a conversation starter. Um,
and I like a couple years ago, I printed my own stickers at home. I printed a bunch, and then
oh
like
yeah,
you're right. People would walk up to me and be like hey, like show me your stickers, and I'd be like, oh,
yeah,
gladly.
yeah. It's pretty cool. It's sticker culture is a thing absolutely at DEF CON. So if you have your own stickers, you don't need your own stickers. It's harder to get stickers, I would say, if you don't have your own stickers, because some people don't like to just give them away. They rather just trade them.
Mm,
Um, Other people just I give mine away. I think I
same,
gave
yeah.
away like 1,500 stickers last year,
Mm-hmm.
all of which was sponsored by my Bird app revenue from posting dumb shit on the internet. Um, so shout out to I don't know if you can see this hat back here. Somebody somebody who works at potentially X gave me this X hat right here.
Oh, that's an X
Um,
hat. I can't see it.
I
Interesting.
can't
Cool.
grab it because I have my headphones on,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yes, take my word
Mm,
for it. Um,
mm.
but yeah, they were like, hey, that's it's funny that you post stuff that makes fun of Elon Musk, and I work there, so have a hat.
Mm.
I was like, that's cool, because they disappeared into the ether there. I never saw them again. Uh, and so, yeah, I mean, you meet all kinds of fun, cool people at DEF CON. So I recommend definitely go if you are interested in hacking. Always interesting topics. Come see us at the SEC. I usually try to volunteer. I've got a lot of friends at Red Team Village as well, so you may see me at Red Team Village. I'll usually post my schedule before DEF CON if you try to find me. I make it very easy to find me and my stickers. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, like feel free to reach out to me on the usual socials. I'm on all the Bird app clones as well. If you don't like Bird app. Um, but yeah, this was great. Great to talk to you. I've been a big Soul Ice fan for a while, and so um, appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you and give you some perspective. Um, no guarantee my perspective is the right perspective. YMMV. If you hate what I said, come tell me about it. I love to argue on the internet. So
Yeah. Like find oh, comment below or find this
yeah,
this post on Twitter and let's argue. We love to
yeah.
argue.
Like, subscribe, and argue below.
Fight in the comments.
Yeah. let's make some money on this thing.